It's literally about connecting people and ultimately economies. We will continue supporting the regional economic area in order to remove barriers and to open up markets. The European Commission will now support investments in digital infrastructure in the Western Balkans and push the digital agenda. We will continue promoting human connectivity, particularly for young people. Moving forward, we will further reinforce our support to youth, focusing in particular on cooperation, education, including vocational education.
By building and connecting transport and energy infrastructure, the EU will help improve trade in goods and services within the Western Balkans and with the European Union. This will not only increase the region's competitiveness, potential for job creation and energy security, but it will benefit the whole of Europe and citizens of the Western Balkans and the EU.
Have you ever noticed something illegal going on at work? But because you were concerned for your career and did not know how or who to report to, you decided to remain silent. Blowing the whistle can be risky. Whistleblowers must be protected effectively when they report wrongdoing. Why? Because whistleblowing helps to identify and put an end to wrongdoing that harms society, such as money laundering, fraud, corruption, or damage to the environment and people's health. The EU wants to ensure that whistleblowers across the Union feel safe to report breaches of EU law they observe and are protected effectively against retaliation. How? By ensuring companies and public authorities set up easy-to-access avenues to report wrongdoing. By keeping the whistleblower's identity confidential throughout the reporting process. By protecting whistleblowers from negative repercussions, such as retaliation, intimidation in the workplace, or dismissal. Do you want to know more about whistleblower protection?
More and more, criminals use digital services such as email and texts to commit crimes. Traditionally, evidence was physical and found in documents or fingerprints that could be searched locally. But now, a lot of evidence is online or in the cloud, often in an unknown location. That makes access to digital evidence complicated. It can take many months. It may be stored in different countries. Vital evidence can disappear while authorities work to get hold of it, allowing criminals to go undetected and leaving our justice system hamstrung. So, what can we do to solve this problem? The European Commission is proposing rules to make it quicker and easier for police and judicial authorities to obtain digital evidence. It would dramatically speed things up. Service providers would have to provide the digital evidence within 10 days, and in emergencies in 6 hours. This would allow criminals to be caught and punished, and further crimes or terrorist attacks to be prevented. This will be done with the necessary safeguards. A judicial authority will have to authorize all requests. Fundamental rights, such as the rights to due process and to data protection, will be protected. Fast access to digital evidence, giving law enforcement the right tools to fight crime and terrorism in the digital age.
Hemos hablado sobre todo de la educación, sanidad, migración.
La défense d'un environnement durable.
We address some economic and social issues. Les citoyens nous diront ce qu'ils attendent de l'Union européenne. Ils exprimeront sans doute leurs doutes,
leurs interrogations, mais aussi leurs espoirs. À nous d'y répondre.
Úgy gondolom, hogy közösen kéne dolgozni mind a 27 Európai Uniós államnak.
Jag önskar att liksom alla länder i Europa ska ha goda chanser för bra levnadsstandard.
Ahora que soy jubilado y soy abuelo, lo que me gustaría sería contribuir a construir una mejor Europa para dejársela a mi nieto.
Και όλοι οι Ευρωπαίοι πολίτες να έχουν ίσα δικαιώματα, και οι μικρές οι χώρες και οι μεγάλες.
Con più entusiasmo da tutti gli Stati membri, insomma, di tutti gli Stati membri per andare avanti insieme più forti.
The Commission is proposing to set up a European Solidarity Corps. Young people across the European Union will be able to volunteer their help where it is needed most, to respond to crisis situations. I want this European Solidarity Corps up and running as soon as possible, and by 2020 to see the first 100,000 young Europeans taking part. These young people will be able to develop their skills and get not only work, but also an invaluable human experience.
The single market allows products to move freely across the European Union. It gives our 500 million Europeans a wide choice of products of high safety and environmental standards. And it creates business opportunities for our many companies. This requires trust. Trust among member states that what is allowed to be sold in one country can be sold elsewhere in Europe. And trust by consumers that what they are buying is indeed safe, whether it has been produced in the EU or somewhere far away. Right now, this is not always the case. That's why the European Commission is taking action in two areas. Companies, especially SMEs, are sometimes prevented from selling their products, such as shoes, tableware or furniture, in another country, although they meet the necessary requirements. We are making it easier for companies to sell products across Europe by lightening their paperwork and improving cooperation among national authorities. And although we have very strict safety and consumer information rules in the EU, too many products are sold even though they don't meet these requirements. This is true for some products sold online or imported from outside of the EU. We will improve controls by national authorities so they can better detect illegal products in the EU and act fast to keep unsafe products from European consumers. Giving European consumers a greater choice of safe products, helping our companies, big or small, trade across the EU, closing loopholes in imports from abroad for a true European single market.
The EU Customs Union is unique in the world. It provides a common external border and removes customs controls between the European member states. The EU Customs Union saves you time. When you order a pair of French shoes, they will be delivered to your doorstep in Lithuania without being stopped by customs. When you travel from Denmark to Italy for summer holidays, your luggage won't be checked by customs and you will get to your destination quicker. It saves you money. When you buy a new bicycle from a Dutch bicycle maker, you can receive it in Ljubljana without paying any customs duties. When you buy Canadian maple syrup, you can benefit from 0% tariff thanks to that CETA trade agreement now in force between the EU and Canada. It protects you. Customs can stop fake medicines from entering the EU. They can also check if toys or other goods are safe to use when imported into the EU. Customs can stop the illegal importation of weapons and explosives that can save countless lives. The EU Customs Union protects your business. Anti-dumping duties guarantee a level playing field for European companies by fighting unfair competition. It protects our environment by fighting the illegal trade in ivory and by stopping imports of plant and animal species which may pose a threat to EU's ecosystem.
Okay, good morning, everybody. We're here for the press conference on the Copyright Directive. I'll first of all give the floor to the interpreters who may wish to make an announcement regarding their strike. I would also mention that there is a press release on the strike issue of the interpreters in the press room. No? Okay, if the interpreters will not make the statement? No? Okay, then it's fine. Then I'll give the floor straight away to Mr. Voss, the rapporteur for the directive.
So, thanks a lot. Good morning to everyone. So far, I understood the situation. There's no interpretation to German or from German to English. So that's why I continue in English. We are facing now a kind of a campaign with a lot of many misconceptions, with fake arguments. And so yesterday also the Wikipedia sites in Italy and also in France, they're closing their sites with the recommendation, yes, we should kill this report tomorrow. So and this is something what is going beyond everything what is acceptable. Especially Wikipedia, we have excluded in Article 2 in the subparagraph, and if they would like to be affected by Article 13, we can easily change these, but so far they are excluded, and I can't see why they are using these now, and this gives you a kind of a feeling how they are acting, all these platforms, in a way. And even so, I've got 60,000 emails the last 2 weeks with the same automated content. And but also here you can see they are using arguments that are totally wrong, and not reading the text is just to be trying to being powerful. And they are describing catastrophic scenarios and such a kind of a simple tool in their basic lobbying strategy. And so, of course, everything will break down and so on and so on. We have had this with banks, we have had this with telecoms, and now we have this with the internet giants, that regulation done by the European legislator will lead to something what is a kind of a catastrophic. But let me say expressly, underlined, we will not, and we will not, we do not, and we will not end the internet. And news sharing, or we are not ending memes at all. So what we want is to make sure that the same rules are applying in the real world and apply also online. And in this case, it means copyright rules, of course. And we would like to make sure that when a platform company, and I want to underline that they are companies, huge companies, which makes hundreds of billions by using the work of others, that these companies must pay for making money from the creations of others. And what we want also is to make sure that if these platform companies choose not to pay for the copyright works they use, they accept the responsibility to offer less material to their users. I have, however, been told that the end of the internet news sharing and the end of memes could happen at least as an indirect result of our legislation, but this is not true. The internet could be poorer and less could be shared as a direct result of the huge platform companies not paying the market economy rules, which have allowed them to become incredibly wealthy. So let me say something. The platform companies, especially Google, Facebook, and Amazon, must recognize that the rules which regulate the market economy, which have allowed them to make large profit, also include rules on copyright. Copyright and intellectual property rights are an integral part of the market economy, and you cannot pick and choose which rules regulating the market economy you want to follow. And I'm convinced that we look back in 5 years' time, we will see a big fuss. This was for nothing. So I'm optimistic. I hope that the internet companies, which are always inviting us to be optimistic, can also approach this moment optimistically. And if you're looking to these Article 11 or Article 13, what we are trying is to get a fair remuneration for the works that have been done by others. This is the intention. And even in Article 13, we are asking for more responsibility on the content, what they have on their platforms. This is not only including crime, it's also copyright infringements. And that is our goal and nothing else. And that, I think, has to be also promoted by the whole right holders. And that's why I think we are on the right way. But this campaign might affect a lot of colleagues, and this is something what makes me sad, influencing the European legislator by fake news, and this might have an effect, but we will see tomorrow. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. I don't know, maybe Ms. Rosier?
Yes, as there is no interpretation, I will be speaking in English, but if there are people who want answers in French, I can do as well as you can guess. Well, Axel has said a lot about what's going on here in this parliament, but this is, it's really intense right now, but it's been going on for weeks and months ahead of the vote. We've been witnessing this this idea that we were having a hidden agenda somehow, which would lead to censorship and filtering the internet. But in case you've not done that for the moment, I really encourage you to read what's in the text, because this is what we should be talking about, and not false ideas spread by people who have interest in making people think that what's going on is not what is in the text. What the text says, it only says that we want to end this regime, which is set by a directive, which is the e-commerce directive, dating from year 2000, considering that the GAFA platforms are the same as technical host, and that they have no responsibility for what they are doing in spreading and broadcasting the content. That's what they use to avoid any kind of regulation on the internet. And of course, the idea of regulating internet also somehow disturbs people, thinking that the internet is only a place where you can share on a very horizontal and free basis. But as Axel said, we have limited the scope of this directive, and this is in Article 2. If you want to confirm, I really encourage you to look in what is in Article 2, just limiting the scope of Article 13 to commercial platforms having an active role in broadcasting content. So, as it was said, Wikipedia is out, research and education sharing platforms are out, open source developing platforms are out, cloud services are out, and services in which you can identify the right holder are out of this scope. So this is a very limited scope, targeting quite precisely these platforms that are now crucial in broadcasting and spreading cultural content, but not playing by the rules as some other companies said, because it's not only of building an equal conditions between the real world and the digital world. It's also having fair conditions in the digital world. For example, for music streaming. In France, the market I know, YouTube counts for more than 80% of streaming music streaming use, and it represents less than 3% of the revenues given to artists by streaming. At the same time, you've got European companies such as Spotify, such as Deezer, which play by the rules, which have licensing agreements with right holders, so giving a share of the profits to these right holders, but they are facing an unfair competition with another service, almost the same, but with different rules. And if we want to support European companies and European creation, we have to end this unfair situation. And I must say, the fact, the intensity of the campaign we are facing, for me, it's also a sign that we are doing the right thing, because the ones that are reacting are mostly the ones we are targeting, which are the GAFA. As for Article 11, for example, which is trying to balance the value gap, but with the press and independent press. In France, we didn't choose to have this licensing obligation which existed in other countries. So it's Google, on a voluntary basis, funding some newspapers. But last week, Google has sent an email to these newspapers it's funding with the text, the argumentation why they should be against Article 11 and Article 13, and encouraging them to put this in their newspapers. I don't think this is in this way that we can achieve an independent press. So, and this campaigning that is supposed to be citizens' mobilization, there are huge amounts of money behind it. And it's not only easy to decrypt the way the money takes to finance these campaigns. And we have had events, even here in this parliament, bypassing the transparency rules, just to let people think that there were some activist campaign and no one was behind it. But if you look behind it, you can see that it is CCIA, the American lobby for the tech industries and big platforms, which is behind it. And it's really surprising to see that these actors, who are supposed to be the champions of transparency and fairness, are using these hidden ways to try to influence people and influence the lawmakers here in Europe. So I find it very, very shocking, and now it's reaching a level of intensity and of violence, it's verbal violence. I've heard about, I don't know, actually you didn't say that, but I've heard about death threats. Yes. Come on. What are we talking about? So this is going much too far, much too far. And let's calm down and just listen to, and maybe Jean-Marie will tell a bit more about that, but to a third party, which is independent, and who was consulted by people who were against Article 13. It's the European Data Protection Supervisor. He issued his opinion yesterday. Like always, it goes in a way and the other, but if you read it carefully, it's quite plain. It is stating that Article 13, as it is drafted, does not set any obligation for general monitoring of the internet. So really, we've got some extracts of it, but if you want to also to have information on that, please ask us. We can provide it, but I think somehow it's not ending the debate, of course, but there we have an independent authorities which is very much concerned by data protection and fundamental rights on the internet, which issues a very clear opinion. So I think now we can see where the real arguments are. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Kawada.
Thank you very much. This is a new period which is beginning now. And everybody understands. If you are seeking for proofs that it is a new period, look to this struggle, to this battle with so much money, so much interventions, thousands and thousands mails, phone calls, dedicated sites by the GAFA, some of them, and a storm of propaganda. Why? because they know there is only one question. The question, they are talking about liberty, but they are thinking about money. This is exactly the same question in their mind. And we cannot accept that over Europe, the members of this union have to defend their original culture, original historical culture. Why Europe is able to produce the most important law protecting the personal data, but why, explain to me why we will not be able to protect the cultural data that we need? Because we don't have the platforms. We have the contents. The platform use the contents. And the question is, now we want to oblige them to share. Not to kill anybody, but to share the revenue, the very enormous revenue they are earning with these contents created and paid by the press companies, for example, or by the creators, if we are thinking about the artistic productions. This is the very central point of this question. And there are a lot of lies, my colleagues explained, flowing over us, over our shoulders. And everyone who wants to have a true opinion on this text, which is very soft text, no obligations for anybody inside, just a new right created to give some possibility in terms of law, a possibility to open negotiation with the GAFAs and the platform. Just possibility to open negotiation, no obligation for anyone. And my opinion is that this is more than a question of liberty for press and liberty for creators. This is a question of democracy. Because who are we? We are people organized in a union based on the history of each of our countries. And we have to defend this culture because if not, we will open the market, hands up, opening the market to the flow of the American industry. American has to be respected as far as they respect us. This is not the case. And this is the reason because this struggle is fundamental for the next future of us. They are talking, remain again, they are talking about liberty, but they are only thinking about money. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Trippel.
Yeah, thank you very much. Unfortunately, I have to say that I totally share the impression that it's an hysteric campaign working with lies and in the name of freedom doing a fake news campaign. Because there is no censorship, there is no general filtering, everything is in the text. It's only about to make them responsible and pay for the copyright-protected content of third people. Journalists can link when you want, others can link. There is no obligation on that level for a text. But the aggregators, when they use copyright-protected material from third parties, they have to license and they have to work together with collective management organizations. That is the whole thing about, and I think that is a very good sort of being proud European lawmakers and impose to American tech giants when they want to be in the European Union to which rules they have to comply. The same with taxes for them and responsibility for hate speech without infringing freedom of expression. We did it already with the Audiovisual Media Service Directive. We have clear rules imposed on them. We had the same debate in the plenary. Is it about the Ministry of Truth? No, it's not. It's only about good regulation, smart regulation, and no over-regulation, no over-blocking. Don't believe in those lies. It's not true. Please read the legal text Everything is there. They even on Twitter wanted to jail me. In the name of freedom, they said, we don't accept the opinion of Mrs. Trüpel, we put her into jail. I'm very happy to live in a state with the rule of law where those young boys cannot jail me because I have a different opinion. So what about Google and the other tech giants? They only want to have private solutions, as we heard in France. We had it in Germany with GEMA, the Collecting Society for Music. They do it on a private level, they put money on the table, and then they say, okay, you depend on us and our private payments, and be quiet. No, we need legal solutions. We are the lawmakers. We say what we want to see on the European market, and we do it with other treaties as well. That's the only thing what we are doing. All my kids can upload what they want. That is not the problem. I'm confronted every day with the argument I cannot upload anymore. Yes, you can, but the platforms are responsible. That is the whole game about. It's not against freedom of the individual users. The users remain on the level where they are now, but we make the platforms the most powerful monopolies we ever had in the world. We make them responsible. And that is what we do. We do it with other laws as well, and therefore I'm so convinced that it's the right move what we are doing, because we don't want to let them escape with private money. It's about the future of liberal democracy. It's about European impact in the globalization and in the digital revolution. And I'm not against innovation. I use all that stuff every day and night sometimes, what is not very healthy. I embrace innovation, but it's about good rules and eye level and a level playing field. And Facebook and Google and Apple and Amazon, they just have to play to our European laws, then there is no problem. Users are not in any danger. They can do what they do if it's not a crime. Of course, you cannot call for murder on Twitter. But if you use copyright-protected material, the platform will be responsible to license and to pay. And the same for journalists. Last sentence, what we do, the publishers right. And that was a big fight with the press publishers. And I'm very happy that we said, if you want to have a publisher's right, because Google is making the money, the journalists must be included in the solution. That is now in the legal proposal. So that is really progress from my point of view.
Thank you. And finally, Ms. Beres.
Thank you very much. First, I would like to thank the interpreter, because I think we have to also express our solidarity with them for being on strike and for the time being not finding a solution in this House. I also want to thank Axel Voss, because he has made possible that 4 groups are represented in this press conference around his report, and he's been going through a tremendous job, and I think the equilibrium he has finally achieved in the jury committee is a very great one. So I really want to thank him on behalf of all of us and to tell him how much we support his end result. I think this battle is more than emblematic. This is not by hazard that there are so many lobbying and passion behind. So we also have to identify what are the lobby behind and what are the challenges. It has already been mentioned that in the end it's all about democracy. But I think behind this you have to go a bit more in the detail. And here I just would like to invite you to have 3 levels of reading. The first one is just to remember what happened 20 years ago. 20 years ago, the EU let its telecommunication industry being outsourcers. And now the challenge is the follow-up of this. Are we going to allow the content industry to be outsourced? This is the first challenge, and this is a challenge where the battle with the US, let's call it like this, has been engaged for a very long time through different channels. This is only one among all the other channels. For example, when you look at the mandate the US wanted to have when they were ready to have a discussion on TTIP, the main reason for that was also to get the control of the content. The second level I wanted to identify is that I think EU, normally we have learned by the time that consumer, they are a good driver for internal market logic, but they are not the only one to be the driver in the EU policies. And it's not old-fashioned to be looking at the defense of author, creators versus consumer. because the battle that is now going on around this sector is just the avant-garde of what could happen in many other sectors related to workers. So I think this is a second level where we really have to look at the emblematic dimension of this battle. And the third one I want to mention is something that I always refer to in the socialist group, because for me it's really weird. I think in the socialist group, and hopefully this is not the only group where this battle is going on, we are more than proud what the EU has achieved when it comes to RGPD. Because RGPD now gives a responsibility to the platform and identify that the content on the platform is something they have to be responsible for the protection of our liberty, of our freedom and of our democracy. And on the other hand, we also know that there's a huge battle, and normally the progressive, they are all in favor of this, to make sure that these GAFA and the bigger giants, they would pay their fair part of the taxation system and not just go for tax evasion. But when it comes to the content of the culture industry, then, or the media, you would have a problem. I think this is really the heart of the discussion. Now, the arguments that are mainly lobby these days, as has been already mentioned, it's about filter and censure. Who can say that they don't understand that there's a filter going on in the GAFA that is detrimental to your own freedom, because they decide what should be put on the first page and so on. And the last thing I want to do is just to read what has already mentioned in the conclusion of the European Data Protection Supervisor, because they've been asked to give their opinion on the basis of an opponent to Article 13 and Article 11 and to the whole mandate, namely Catherine Stiller, because it's public. She was the one. She was the one to request for this opinion by the EDPS. And the conclusion is as such. Of course, they say all it will be about implementation and how member state will translate the law, because it's going to be a directive, so you have to make sure that it's going to be properly implemented. But take note that the provision contained in the proposal of the draft resolution do not aim to mandate general surveillance of activities on the internet. Safeguard provided for in the current text must be respected in practice. Consider that the measure required to content sharing services providers in Article 13.1 of the proposal will almost certainly involve the processing of personal data, and that regulation will be duly applicable. So the conclusion there, they are crystal clear, and I think this is maybe one of our last piece of argumentation, and I hope it will, at the minimum, move some votes from a no to an abstention as a minimum, and that we could confirm the mandate tomorrow.
Thank you. We have very little time, unfortunately. We have the other speakers for the next press conference who are waiting outside. But I can take one brief question now, and then those of you who would be available afterwards to journalists, I think we can speak afterwards. We can go out from that way. So, questions? No? You prefer chatting afterwards? Okay.